All right, me. It is a couple days later, still towards the end of July, and I've just finished reading Woody Allen's Without Feathers. I'm glad it took a couple days before I read this book because it is a full and complete dive into absurdism, which is just so wild to read, right? Absurdism as a genre, right, is all about exactly that, being absurd and doing the wrong thing, or doing things that are so completely unexpected that they make no sense, but then they make sense because it's supposed to be absurd, right? I'm trying to think if there's really if I can really even name any other truly like absurdist things, right? And I guess the closest thing would be more or less Kafka with the trial, but even then, right, that makes more sense, right? Because really, so like this collection, right, is all about absurdism. Really, it's highlighted in, I would say, four things, right? There's two plays that are put into here. It's Death and God, which are the two plays that are in here, as well as there's a collection of stories in between those plays that are making fun of the kind of Sherlock Holmes-esque, or like if you're a younger person, Encyclopedia Brown type, right, where it's a short story and then the detective somehow is able to figure out who's responsible through that very, very short snippet of things, right? And the answers in this collection, Woody Allen's collection, the answers to all of them are through things that there's no possible way that we could ever understand or know, right? And it is through absolutely absurd reasoning as to why those are the answers, right? And then the final one is the final portion in this collection, which is on slang. I think that's the name of it. But it is a short little snippet talking about the origins of certain slang and how it came to be, and it's just all, in essence, absurd, right? But yeah, right. What's also really interesting to me is that there crosses a line between absurdism for absurdism, and then absurdism, and then looking at it through what is designed to be a completely ironic form and fashion, right? It doesn't, and so you're drawing all these lines and making all these distinctions and whatnot, but the answer is like none of it just makes sense, right? And it's mostly clearly seen in the play God, which is intended to be this cyclical nature thing, right? But is just full of complete and absolute wild things, right? Of pulling people on stage from the crowd, but then they're actually actors. To, you know, there's a portion in which they call up Woody Allen, and Woody Allen, you know, wants them to call back once they figure out the end of the play, and the whole end becomes a cyclical thing. We end right back where we start, but the irony there is the writer that's inside of the play, right, describes his situation as if he starts from the end and then writes to the start, he can never find a starting point, which is then ironic because that's where the starting point is. Yeah. So lots of absurdism, lots of just grand situational irony. It's an interesting read. The death play is, I think, probably my preferred piece in all of this. But that's because it reminds me greatly of The Trial, right? In which you have this character who has suddenly been tasked with that there's this murder going around, and he's suddenly tasked with being part of the plot to stop the murderer, but then also no one's telling him what the plot is. But at the same time, he's expected to know exactly what to do, and then it just kind of continues and growing from there, right? Which brings a lot of similarities to The Trial, right? But yeah. The one other thing that to note here, right, is that this collection really kind of exemplifies the misogyny that people talk about with Woody Allen, right? Because sometimes it's very hard to define what that is, right? And people, right, you can look at anyone and go like, well, there's one strong woman character, so therefore they can't be misogynistic, right? Whereas this, I think, really exemplifies it by really showcasing that all of the women that exist within Woody Allen's plays, right? Or within a lot of his works, right? The vast majority of them are defined by sex, whether they work in sex in some way, right? Or even like there's a section here, right, which doesn't refer to women as prostitutes, but it's a story about how there's a service in which you can buy attractive women to then discuss philosophy with you, right, or discuss literature with you, right? And it all falls into the same exact pattern, right? Where you're just replacing sex with philosophy, right? So all of his women, or the vast majority of his women, fall into either being very sex driven, right, or that they are the butt of jokes for sexual assault, right? And that's used a few different times throughout Without Feathers, of where it's a throwaway joke that doesn't need to be there, but it's included, right? And Woody Allen makes a point to write it in, right? Which is not good for anyone, right? So yeah, that's kind of the fun little struggles that we deal with when we read Woody Allen, right? Is that his plays are never, or any of his works, right, are so male driven, and then when women are included in this, or when people of color are included in them, they are horrendously treated, right, as a joke, which yeah, so that's Without Feathers by Woody Allen. I wish I had a better note to end on, but that's that.